I stood in the doorway of my Vermont vacation home, my hands trembling so violently that my phone nearly slipped from my grip. The scene before me wasn't just a violation, it was a complete desecration of everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed to build. My sister Chloe was wearing my designer dress, the one I had saved 3 months to afford, as she laughed and clinked champagne glasses with a room full of strangers. The massive Christmas tree that dominated my living room was covered in ornaments I had never seen before. My parents' photograph, the last one taken before the accident, had been replaced by a portrait of Marcus and his family. And there, scattered across every surface, were signs that someone else had claimed my sanctuary as their own. The bass from the speakers pounded through my chest as Chloe finally noticed me. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look guilty. She smiled that same condescending smile I had seen 1,000 times before and said something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, Eleanor, back so soon? I thought you'd be busy enjoying your fancy life somewhere. Welcome home to our place." Our place. The words echoed in my skull like a death knell. If you're watching this right now, chances are you know exactly what it feels like to give everything to someone who gives nothing back. You know that suffocating feeling when you realize you've been played. You know that moment when the scales finally fall from your eyes and you see the truth you've been avoiding for years. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. But first, do me a favor. Smash that like button if you've ever had to choose between your own happiness and someone else's manipulation. Hit subscribe because I share real stories about real people finding their strength in impossible situations. And comment below. Tell me, what would you have done standing in that doorway, watching your own sister destroy everything you worked for? Because I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. But let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how I ended up here, standing in the ruins of my own home, face to face with the sister I had given everything for. I was 8 years old when our parents died in a car accident on Interstate 89. Chloe was only 3. I still remember the social worker's voice, flat and bureaucratic, explaining that we would be placed in foster care unless a relative could take us. Our grandmother stepped up, bless her heart, but she was elderly and frail. The responsibility of raising Chloe fell largely on me. I became a mother before I even understood what that meant. While other teenagers were going to parties and football games, I was helping Chloe with her homework. While my friends were applying to out-of-state colleges, I was choosing Boston University specifically because it was close enough to come home every weekend. I worked 2 jobs through college, one at a coffee shop and another doing data entry at night, so I could send money home for Chloe's school supplies and clothes. When Grandma passed away during my junior year, I became Chloe's legal guardian. I was 21 years old. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once Chloe was old enough, once she was stable, I could finally focus on my own life. But that day never seemed to come. After I graduated and landed a job at a consulting firm in Boston, Chloe moved in with me. She promised it would just be until she found her footing. That was 7 years ago. The pattern started small. Chloe would forget to pay her share of the rent. Then she would borrow money for textbooks and never pay it back. Then it was her car payment. Then her credit card bills. I watched as she dropped out of community college, quit 3 different jobs, and spent her days shopping online and posting on social media. Every time I tried to have a conversation about responsibility, she would cry and remind me that she had lost her parents too, that she had trauma, that I was the only family she had left. And I would cave. Every single time. There were warning signs I chose to ignore, like the time she canceled my birthday dinner at the last minute because she wanted to go to a concert with her new boyfriend Marcus. Or when she asked me to co-sign a loan for a Jeep she clearly couldn't afford, then defaulted on the payments, destroying my credit score. Or the time she threw a party in my apartment while I was away on a business trip and my neighbors nearly called the police. But the moment that should have been my wake-up call happened 6 months before that terrible night in Vermont. It was Thanksgiving, and I had worked overtime for 3 weeks straight to afford a proper dinner for us. I wanted us to have one good memory together, something that felt like family. I spent the entire day cooking, my grandmother's recipes laid out on the counter like sacred texts. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce from scratch, 3 different pies. The apartment smelled like my childhood, like the last Thanksgiving we had with our parents. Chloe showed up 2 hours late with Marcus and his parents. She didn't apologize. She didn't even acknowledge the effort I had made. Marcus's mother, Patricia, walked in and immediately started criticizing everything. The turkey was too dry. The stuffing wasn't seasoned enough. She couldn't believe I didn't have a wine cellar. Chloe laughed along with her comments, adding her own jokes about my trying too hard to be Martha Stewart. I stood in my own kitchen, watching my sister mock me, and felt something crack inside my chest, but I smiled. I served dinner. I cleaned up alone while they all watched football in the living room, and when they left, Chloe took the leftover pies without asking. I cried that night for the first time in years, not because of the dinner, but because I realized I had been invisible to her all along. All those years of sacrifice, all that love and support, and I was nothing more than a convenience to her. A bank account with feelings. I should have confronted her then. I should have set boundaries, but I was tired, so tired, and it was easier to keep the peace than to start a war, so I kept going. I paid her rent when she claimed she was between opportunities. I covered her car insurance. I bought her groceries. I even hired a financial advisor to help her get back on track, and when she missed every single appointment, I made excuses for her. My career was the only thing I had that was truly mine. I threw myself into work with the kind of desperation that comes from having nowhere else to channel your energy. I climbed the corporate ladder with a vengeance, taking on projects no one else wanted, working weekends and holidays. My colleagues called me dedicated. My therapist, who I had started seeing in secret, called it avoidance. After landing a major account that saved my company from losing a key client, I received a substantial bonus. For the first time in my adult life, I had money that wasn't already spoken for. Money that wasn't earmarked for Chloe's latest crisis or Grandma's old medical bills. It was mine. And I decided to do something radical. I decided to spend it on myself. I found the vacation home in Vermont almost by accident, scrolling through real estate listings late one night when I couldn't sleep. It was a small luxury cabin, really, but the listing called it a cottage, and that felt more attainable somehow. 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto a forest of pine trees. It was 3 hours from Boston, far enough to feel like an escape, but close enough to reach on a weekend. The price was just within my budget if I used the bonus and took out a modest mortgage. I didn't tell Chloe I was buying it. At first, I convinced myself it was because I wanted to surprise her, to show her what hard work and sacrifice could achieve, maybe inspire her. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep and the truth had nowhere to hide, I knew better. I kept it secret because telling Chloe anything good that happened to me was like handing her a weapon. Within hours, she would find a way to turn my joy into her crisis. She would suddenly need a down payment for her own place, and couldn't I just lend her half of what I spent? Or she would invite herself up for extended stays until my sanctuary became just another place where I served her needs. Or worse, so much worse, she would look at me with those wounded eyes and ask why I was abandoning her, why I needed space away from my own sister. Didn't I love her anymore? And I would crumble. I always crumbled. So I said nothing. I protected this one fragile thing by building walls of silence around it, knowing that even those walls might not be enough to keep her out. The closing was on a Tuesday in October. I signed the papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. When the realtor handed me the keys, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade. Hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could have a life that wasn't defined by obligation and sacrifice. I furnished the place slowly, carefully, over the next 2 months. Every piece was chosen with intention, A forest green sofa that reminded me of my grandmother's house, a dining table made from reclaimed wood, white cotton curtains that would filter the morning light. I hung my parents' photograph above the fireplace, the one where they're smiling at the camera on what must have been a summer day, my mother's hand resting on my father's shoulder. I placed it there deliberately, wanting them to see this triumph, this small victory of building something for myself. December arrived with the first heavy snow of the season. I had planned to spend Christmas at the cabin, my first holiday alone in years. I told Chloe I was going on a work trip to Seattle. She barely looked up from her phone when I mentioned it, just nodded and asked if I could leave her some cash for groceries. I left her $300 on the kitchen counter and drove north with a sense of liberation I hadn't felt since I was a child. The drive should have taken 3 hours, but with the snow, it took almost 5. The highways were clear enough, but the back roads leading to the cabin were treacherous. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel so tightly, but with every mile that passed, I felt lighter. I had packed wine, good wine, not the cheap bottles Chloe and I usually shared. I had brought steaks and fresh vegetables and ingredients to bake cookies from my grandmother's recipe. I had downloaded 3 novels onto my phone. I was going to read by the fireplace and take long walks in the snow and remember what it felt like to be a person instead of just a caretaker. The snow fell thick and silent as I turned onto the private road, each flake catching in my headlights like tiny stars. The pine trees bowed under their white burden, their branches forming an archway that transformed the narrow lane into something magical, something out of a snow globe or a childhood memory of what peace should look like. Through the gaps in the trees, I caught glimpses of golden light, warm and inviting, and my chest loosened for the first time in months. My cabin, my sanctuary, waiting for me exactly as I had left it. I had programmed the thermostat to kick on hours ago, and I imagined the space now, the air holding that particular warmth that comes from a house preparing itself for someone it loves. I pictured myself curled up on my green sofa with a glass of wine, the fireplace crackling, the world finally quiet. I was already planning which book I would read first, which corner of the house I would claim for the next 3 days. I was so lost in that fantasy of peace that I didn't immediately register what the extra lights meant, or why there were tire tracks in the driveway that weren't mine. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. There were lights on, yes, but too many of them. And were those cars in the driveway? My driveway? I had only been here twice since buying the place, brief weekend trips to set things up. Had someone broken in? My mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. Squatters. Burglars. Vandals. I parked my car on the street, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. I should call the police, I thought. But first I needed to see what I was dealing with. I parked on the street, my instincts screaming that something was wrong even as my brain tried to rationalize it away. Maybe I had left more lights on than I remembered. Maybe the timer had malfunctioned. Maybe. I approached on foot, my boots breaking through the pristine snow with each step, leaving a trail of evidence that I had been here, that I would witness whatever was happening to my sanctuary. The cold bit at my exposed skin, but I barely felt it. My breath formed clouds that hung in the air for a moment before disappearing, just like the peace I had been craving. That's when the sound reached me. Not music, assault. Rock music cranked so high it wasn't about enjoyment anymore. It was about dominance. About claiming space. The bass didn't just reach my ears, it invaded my chest, my bones, rattling through me like a violation I could feel in my teeth. The house itself seemed to shake with it, the windows pulsing with each beat like a heartbeat gone arrhythmic. No, this wasn't a malfunction or a mistake. This was deliberate. This was occupation. I forced myself to keep moving, my legs heavy as concrete, each step taking me closer to something I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. Through the falling snow, made ethereal by the golden light spilling from every window, I saw them. 2 vehicles sitting in my garage like they owned the place. The garage door was wide open, an invitation I had never extended, exposing the interior to the elements. The hoods were still warm. I could tell by the way the snow melted on contact, creating small rivers of water that dripped onto my garage floor. They hadn't been here long. One was an SUV I didn't recognize, expensive and new with dealer plates still in the window. The other made time stop. A Jeep Wrangler in that specific shade of metallic blue that Chloe had insisted on, the one that cost an extra $2,000, the one with the upgraded sound system she absolutely had to have, the one with custom rims that she said would make her feel successful. I knew that Jeep the way you know, a wound that never quite heals. I had sat across from a loan officer, my stomach churning, as he explained the terms of co-signing. I had watched Chloe test drive it with Marcus, her face glowing with triumph while I calculated how many months of overtime this would cost me. I had stared at my bank statements every month, watching $467 disappear on the 15th like clockwork, money that could have been mine going to support a vehicle she used to drive to parties and shopping trips, Chloe's Jeep, in my garage, 3 hours from where it should be, which meant only one thing. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick right there in the snow. I walked up to the front door, which was unlocked, and pushed it open. The blast of heat and noise and chaos that greeted me was like stepping into another dimension. The house I had carefully curated, my sanctuary, had been transformed into something unrecognizable. There were at least a dozen people scattered throughout the living room. Empty beer bottles covered every surface. Someone had hung tinsel from the light fixtures. And there, dominating the space where I had imagined a simple, elegant tree, was a monstrosity, 8 feet tall, covered in gaudy golden ornaments and blinking lights that must have cost a fortune. Not my ornaments, not my vision. Someone else's idea of celebration, imposed on my space. I moved through the room in a daze, taking in the details. My white cotton curtains had red wine stains. The dining table had water rings and cigarette burns. Someone had moved my furniture around to create more space for dancing. And everywhere, there were signs that Marcus and his family had moved in. His father's reading glasses on the side table, his mother's knitting basket by the chair, Marcus's laptop and work papers spread across my desk. They had claimed my home as their own. I found Chloe in the kitchen, pouring champagne into glasses. She was wearing my dress, the black Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress I had bought myself as a promotion gift and worn exactly once. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she had on makeup that must have taken an hour to apply. She looked beautiful and confident and utterly at home in my space. When she finally saw me standing in the doorway, she didn't even have the decency to look surprised. That smile, that infuriating smile, spread across her face as she raised her glass in a mock toast. "Oh, Eleanor, back so soon? I thought you'd be busy enjoying your fancy life somewhere. Welcome home to our place." The emphasis she put on "our" was deliberate, cruel. She knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was a declaration of ownership, a statement that nothing I had was truly mine, because family meant everything was shared, whether I wanted it to be or not. The room had gone quiet. All of Chloe's friends, people I had never met, were staring at me. Marcus emerged from somewhere, his face flushed with embarrassment or alcohol or both. His mother Patricia appeared behind him, her expression one of disdain, as if I were the intruder in my own home. "Chloe," I said, and my voice came out cold, so cold it surprised even me. "What the hell are you doing here?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Eleanor. Don't be so dramatic. You weren't using the place for Christmas, and Marcus's family wanted to do something special this year. I thought you'd be happy to help out. You're always saying how families should support each other." The audacity of it took my breath away. She had found my cabin. Somehow she had discovered this one thing I had kept for myself, and she had taken it. Not just borrowed it, taken it, redecorated it, claimed it, and now she was standing in my kitchen, in my dress, acting like I was the unreasonable one. "How did you even find this place?" I asked. She shrugged. unbothered by the anger in my voice. "I saw the paperwork in your desk drawer when I was looking for stamps. You really should lock that thing, by the way. Anyone could go through your stuff." She had gone through my desk, my private documents, my personal space, and she was lecturing me about security. Marcus stepped forward, attempting to play peacemaker. "Eleanor, listen, I know this looks bad, but Chloe said you wouldn't mind. We were just going to stay for the week and clean everything up before you even knew we were here." "Clean up?" I looked around at the disaster that was my living room. "You've destroyed my house, Marcus. There are wine stains on my curtains, burns on my table, and you replaced my parents' photograph with a picture of your family." Patricia spoke up then, her voice sharp and condescending. "We thought this place could use a bit of life in it. It was so sterile before, too much like a museum. A home should be lived in, not treated like a showpiece." She had been here before. They had all been here before. This wasn't their first visit. How many times had they been coming here? How long had this been going on? I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every ruined surface, every violation, every piece of evidence that they had invaded my space and treated it like their own personal vacation rental. My hands were steady now, my mind clear with a cold fury that felt almost liberating. "I'm giving you 24 hours, I said quietly. 24 hours to get out of my house and restore everything to exactly the way it was when you arrived. If you're not gone by this time tomorrow, I'm calling the police and pressing charges for trespassing, breaking and entering, and destruction of property." The room erupted. Chloe's face went red with anger. "You wouldn't dare. I'm your sister. You can't call the cops on your own family." "Watch me," I said, and I meant it. Every word. Chloe rushed toward me, her finger pointed at my chest like a weapon. "You're being crazy right now. Completely unreasonable. We were just trying to have a nice Christmas, and you're acting like we committed a crime." "You did commit a crime," I said. "This is my property. I didn't give you permission to be here. That's trespassing. You've damaged my belongings. That's destruction of property. And you've taken my things without asking. That's theft. God, listen to yourself." Chloe grabbed a wine glass from the counter and threw it to the floor, where it shattered into 100 pieces. "You've changed, Eleanor. You used to care about family. Now all you care about is your stupid rules and your precious things. You're not the person I thought you were." "No," I said quietly. "I'm exactly the person I've always been. You just never bothered to notice." I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't offer explanations or apologies or second chances. I got in my car and drove to the nearest town, where I found a small motel with a flickering neon sign that said vacancy. The room smelled like mildew and the heat barely worked, but I didn't care. I sat on the thin mattress and opened my laptop. The rest of the night passed in a blur of phone calls and emails. I called my mortgage lender and put an alert on the property. I called my insurance company and filed a claim for the damages. I called a locksmith and scheduled an appointment to change all the locks the moment Chloe and her entourage were gone. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I logged into my bank account and canceled every single automatic payment that went to Chloe. The rent payment to her landlord, the car payment for her Jeep, the utilities, the insurance, the credit card that I had added her as an authorized user on. Every single thread that connected my finances to her life, I cut. It took less than an hour to undo years of support. Then I called her landlord directly. His name was George, a retired postal worker who had always been kind to me when I dropped off the rent checks in person. I explained the situation carefully and calmly. I told him that I would be discontinuing my financial support of Chloe and that she would need to either start paying rent herself or vacate the apartment. He was understanding, sympathetic even. He had seen plenty of tenants who took advantage of family members over the years. He gave Chloe 30 days to figure it out. I called the finance company that held the loan on Chloe's Jeep. I explained that I had co-signed under duress and that I wanted my name removed from the loan. They explained that without a co-signer, Chloe wouldn't qualify for the loan and would need to either refinance in her own name or surrender the vehicle. I told them I understood and to proceed with removing my name. They said they would contact Chloe about her options. By the time dawn broke over the motel parking lot, I had systematically dismantled the financial safety net I had built for my sister over the course of 7 years. Part of me felt guilty. But a larger part, a part I didn't even know existed until that moment, felt powerful, free, like I had finally stopped carrying a weight that was never mine to bear. I didn't sleep. Instead, I called the local police department and filed a formal report about the trespassing. The officer who took my call was professional and understanding. He said they would send someone to the property to ensure it was vacated peacefully. I gave him the address, the timeline, and offered to send the photographs I had taken as evidence. He said that wouldn't be necessary for now, but to keep them in case charges needed to be filed later. At 8 in the morning, I drove back to the cabin. There were already 2 police cars in the driveway. I felt a grim satisfaction seeing them there, official and undeniable proof that I was serious. The front door was open and I could hear raised voices from inside. Chloe was screaming at one of the officers, her voice shrill with panic. I walked in to find chaos of a different kind. Marcus and his family were frantically packing their belongings, shoving clothes and toiletries into suitcases with desperate speed. Patricia was crying, actual tears running down her face as she protested to one of the officers that this was all a misunderstanding. Marcus's father was on the phone, presumably with a lawyer, demanding to know what rights they had. Chloe saw me and lunged. She actually lunged at me, her hands reaching for my arms like she wanted to shake some sense into me. One of the officers stepped between us immediately, his hand on her shoulder as he gently but firmly pushed her back. "You can't do this!" She screamed at me, her face twisted with rage and fear. "You're going to let me be homeless? At Christmas? What kind of monster are you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No guilt. No pity. No urge to cave and make everything better like I had done 1,000 times before. She had worn my dress without asking. She had invaded my sanctuary. She had laughed at me in my own home, and now she wanted me to feel bad about enforcing boundaries? "This is the consequence of your choices, Chloe," I said evenly. "I've given you everything for years, my money, my time, my entire life, and you repaid me by violating the one thing I kept for myself. I'm done." She tried to get past the officer again, her hands grasping at air. "We're family. You're supposed to protect me. You promised Mom and Dad you'd take care of me." The mention of our parents hit like a physical blow, but I stood my ground. "I've been taking care of you for 20 years, Chloe. I put my life on hold so you could have everything you wanted, and it was never enough. You wanted more and more and more, and I gave it to you because I thought that's what family meant. But family is supposed to go both ways. You've taken everything and given nothing back. That ends now." Marcus tried to intervene, his voice placating. "Eleanor, please, let's all just calm down and talk about this. I'm sure we can work something out. Chloe loves you. She just made a mistake." "She didn't make a mistake," I said. "She made a choice. She chose to go through my private documents. She chose to take my keys. She chose to bring all of you here and throw a party in my house without permission. Those weren't mistakes. They were deliberate actions. And actions have consequences." Patricia stepped forward, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You're ruining Christmas for all of us. We have nowhere else to go. How can you be so cruel?" "You have a home," I said flatly. "Go there. This is my home, mine, and you are not welcome here." The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm going to need everyone to finish packing and vacate the premises within the hour. This is private property and the owner has asked you to leave." While they packed, I stood by the window and watched the snow fall. It should have been peaceful, this scene. The white forest, the warm interior, the promise of a quiet holiday. Instead, it was tainted by betrayal and anger. But underneath those negative emotions, I felt something else stirring. Something that felt suspiciously like relief. Within 45 minutes, they were gone. All of them. Their cars pulled out of my driveway, tires spinning in the snow, and disappeared down the road. The police stayed for a few more minutes, one of them helping me inventory the damage while the other finished the report. They were kind, professional, treating me like what I was, a victim of trespass. After they left, I stood alone in my ruined living room. The silence was deafening after all that noise. I walked through each room, cataloging the damage. The cigarette burns on the dining table, the wine stains on the curtains, the scratches on the hardwood floor where they had dragged furniture around, the missing bottles from my wine collection, the dent in the wall where someone had clearly fallen against it. But I also noticed things that could be fixed. The curtains could be replaced, the table could be refinished, the wall could be repaired. None of it was permanent. None of it was irreparable. Unlike the damage I had let Chloe do to my life, my finances, my mental health, this house could be restored. I spent the next 3 days at the cabin. I changed the locks myself, watching YouTube tutorials and feeling a surge of pride when the new deadbolt clicked into place. I took down the gaudy Christmas tree and hauled it to the curb. I scrubbed every surface until my hands were raw. I replaced the curtains with new ones, simple linen panels that filtered the light beautifully. I called a furniture repair specialist who said he could fix the table. I repainted the damaged wall. With each repair, I felt lighter. This wasn't just about fixing a house. This was about reclaiming something that had been taken from me, my peace, my autonomy, my right to have something that was just mine. My phone rang constantly. Chloe called 30 times the first day. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to manipulative. She accused me of abandoning her. She reminded me of our dead parents. She swore she would pay me back. She promised she would change. She called me selfish, cold-hearted, a traitor to our family. I listened to each message once, just to document them, and then deleted them. Marcus called too, trying to be the reasonable mediator. He explained that Chloe was devastated, that she couldn't understand why I was being so harsh, that his family was embarrassed and upset. Could we please just talk this through like adults? I blocked his number. On the 4th day, I drove back to Boston. I stopped by my apartment first, half expecting to find it ransacked, but Chloe had apparently taken what she needed when she went to Vermont and hadn't been back since. I packed her belongings methodically, carefully, and had them shipped to her apartment. Then I changed those locks too. The next Monday, I went back to work. My colleagues noticed something different about me, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. I was more confident, more direct. When my boss tried to dump a last-minute project on my desk that wasn't my responsibility, I declined, politely but firmly. When a junior employee tried to take credit for my work in a meeting, I corrected the record immediately. I had spent so many years being the person who said yes to everything, who accommodated everyone else's needs, that I had forgotten what it felt like to advocate for myself. It felt good. Over the following weeks, updates about Chloe reached me through mutual acquaintances. She had lost her apartment after failing to pay rent for 2 months. The Jeep had been repossessed. Marcus had broken up with her, unable or unwilling to support her financially. His family had completely cut ties with her. She was staying on various friends' couches, burning through her social network as quickly as she had burned through my resources. Each piece of news should have made me feel guilty, should have made me want to swoop in and rescue her like I always had before, but I felt nothing, or rather, I felt free. The constant anxiety I had carried about Chloe's next crisis was gone. I wasn't responsible for her anymore. She was an adult, and it was time she learned to act like one. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy. The major account I had landed grew into an even bigger opportunity. My company was merging with another firm, and they needed someone to lead the integration of our client services division. It was a massive project, high visibility, career-defining. I applied for the position and got it. The promotion came with a substantial raise and a corner office with windows overlooking Boston Harbor. For the first time in my adult life, I had money that was truly mine. I paid off my credit cards in full. I opened a retirement account and maxed out my contributions. I scheduled a consultation with a financial planner who helped me create a budget and investment strategy that would set me up for long-term security. Every decision I made was for me, not for someone else's benefit or at someone else's request. It was intoxicating. 3 months after the incident in Vermont, I attended a college reunion. I almost didn't go, still feeling raw from everything that had happened, but my old roommate talked me into it. It was held at a restaurant in Cambridge, and the moment I walked in, I felt out of place. Everyone seemed to have moved on with their lives in ways I hadn't been able to. They had marriages and children and stories about exotic vacations. What did I have? A promotion and a vacation home I had barely been able to enjoy. But then I saw him, Liam. Liam, who had sat next to me in Economics 101. Liam, who had walked me home from the library on late nights when I was too tired to be safe alone. Liam, who had asked me to coffee our senior year, and I had said no because I needed to get home to check on Chloe. Liam, who had always been kind, always been present, always been overlooked. He looked good, better than good. The awkward college kid had grown into a confident man with laugh lines around his eyes and a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. When he saw me, his expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Pleasure? Hope? "Eleanor," he said, making his way through the crowd to reach me. "Wow. You look amazing." I almost deflected the compliment, almost made a self-deprecating joke like I would have done in the past. But instead, I just smiled and said, "Thank you. So do you." We talked for hours. He told me about his career as a software engineer, his recent divorce, his new hobby of rock climbing. I told him about my promotion, my vacation home, and in a moment of unusual openness, about Chloe. Not the whole story, but enough. Enough that he understood I had been carrying a heavy burden and had finally set it down. "I always wondered why you were so stressed in college," he said quietly. "You had this weight on your shoulders that no one else seemed to see. I wanted to help, but you never let anyone in." "I thought I had to do it all myself," I admitted. "I thought that's what being responsible meant." "And now?" "Now I'm learning that being responsible for yourself doesn't mean you have to sacrifice everything for people who don't appreciate it." He smiled at that, a warm, understanding smile that made something flutter in my chest. "I'd like to hear more about that. Would you want to get coffee sometime? I mean, actually get coffee, not just talk about getting coffee like we did in college?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. Our first date was at a small cafe in the North End, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and baristas who took their espresso pulls seriously. We talked until they started stacking chairs on tables. Our second date was a weekend hike in the White Mountains. Our third was dinner at his place, where he cooked pasta from scratch, and we drank wine while discussing everything from politics to our favorite books to what we wanted out of life. Liam was patient. He didn't push for more than I was ready to give. He understood that I was still healing, still learning how to be in a relationship where I wasn't constantly giving and getting nothing in return. He showed me what it felt like to be with someone who valued me, who listened when I talked, who shared equally in both the work and the joy of being together. 4 months into our relationship, Chloe started calling again. This time the messages were different. Less angry. More desperate. She had hit rock bottom, she said. She was working 3 part-time jobs just to afford a room in a shared apartment. She was tired. She was sorry. She wanted to talk. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't ready. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I ever would be. Liam found me one evening staring at my phone, Chloe's latest voicemail playing on a loop in my mind. "You okay?" he asked, settling onto the couch beside me. "She wants to meet," I said. She says she's changed. Do you believe her? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to go back to how things were, when I could fix everything for her. But I know that's not healthy, for either of us. You don't owe her anything, Liam said carefully. But if you want to see her, if you think it might give you closure, I'll support whatever you decide. That's what made Liam different. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't have an agenda. He just supported me in making my own choices, even when those choices were difficult. I thought about it for weeks. I talked to my therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Chen who had been helping me work through my codependency issues. She asked me what I hoped to gain from seeing Chloe, what my boundaries would be, what I would do if Chloe asked for money or a place to stay. Could I say no and mean it? I realized I could. I had been saying no for months now, in small ways and large ones. I could say no to my sister. 8 months after the incident in Vermont, I agreed to meet Chloe. I chose a neutral location, a coffee shop in Cambridge where I could leave easily if I needed to. Liam offered to come with me, but I said no. This was something I needed to do alone. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table by the window. I almost didn't recognize her. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup except for a bit of mascara. She looked tired but somehow more real than I had ever seen her look before. "Eleanor," she said, standing up as I approached. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I said honestly, taking the seat across from her. We ordered coffee in silence, the barista's cheerful demeanor, a stark contrast to the tension at our table. When he left, Chloe spoke first. "I know I don't deserve your time," she said, her hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. "I know I hurt you. I know I took advantage of you for years, and I'm so sorry." I waited. I had learned that silence was its own form of power. "I've been in therapy," she continued. "Marcus's mom, before everything fell apart, she gave me the number for her therapist, said I needed help. I was so angry at her, but she was right. I've been going twice a week for the last 6 months. I've learned a lot about myself, about why I acted the way I did." "And why did you?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. She looked down at her coffee. "I was angry, at Mom and Dad for dying. At you for being the responsible one, for being the one who held it together when I couldn't. I resented that you always had your life together while mine was a mess. And instead of dealing with those feelings, I took them out on you. I made you responsible for my happiness because I couldn't be responsible for it myself." It was the most self-aware thing I had ever heard her say. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was something. "The cabin," I said. "Why did you do that?" She winced. "Because I saw you had something that was just yours, something you didn't share with me, and I hated it. I hated that you were moving on, building a life that didn't center around taking care of me. So I wanted to ruin it. I wanted to show you that you couldn't escape your responsibility to me. God, saying it out loud, it sounds so petty and cruel." "It was petty and cruel," I agreed. "It almost broke me, Chloe. Not just the cabin, but everything leading up to it. All those years of giving and never getting anything back. I lost myself in taking care of you." "I know," she said, and tears started sliding down her cheeks. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change. I'm working. I'm paying my own bills. I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet. And I'm finally dealing with losing Mom and Dad instead of just expecting you to fill that void." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The start of understanding that we had both been damaged by the same tragedy, just in different ways. "I can't go back to how things were," I said firmly. "I won't be your safety net anymore. I won't pay your bills or bail you out of trouble. You need to understand that. I do understand, she said quickly. I don't want to go back to that either. I need to do this on my own. But maybe, eventually, we could try to have a relationship that's actually healthy, where we're sisters, not caretaker and dependent. I thought about it, really thought about it. Could I trust her again? Probably not, at least not completely. But could I give her a chance to prove she had changed? Maybe. I need time, I said. And I need boundaries, clear ones. Whatever you need, she said. I'll respect whatever you need. We talked for another hour. She told me about her jobs, 3 part-time positions that together barely covered her rent and expenses. She told me about her therapy, the hard work of unpacking years of unhealthy patterns. She asked about my life, and I told her about the promotion, about Liam, about finally feeling like I was living for myself. When we left the coffee shop, she didn't ask for a ride or money or any kind of favor. She just thanked me for meeting her and said she hoped we could do it again sometime. I said maybe. Maybe was the best I could offer. Over the next several months, Chloe proved she was serious about changing. She got a better job, a full-time position at a marketing firm. She moved into her own studio apartment, small but clean and paid for with her own money. She kept going to therapy, and she respected the boundaries I set. When I said I couldn't meet for coffee because I had plans with Liam, she said okay without guilt-tripping me. When she mentioned struggling with a bill, she didn't ask me for money, just vented about the frustration of living paycheck to paycheck. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something that resembled a sisterly relationship. We met for coffee once a month. We texted occasionally, usually just checking in or sharing something funny. When my birthday came around, she gave me a card she had made herself, with a heartfelt apology written inside and a promise to do better. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had given me in years. Liam and I moved in together a year after we started dating. He met Chloe at a neutral family gathering, a dinner I organized at a restaurant so no one's space was invaded. He was polite but cautious, and I loved him for not immediately trusting her just because she was my sister. He protected me in a way no one ever had before, not by fighting my battles, but by supporting my right to fight them myself. The vacation home in Vermont became truly mine again. I spent weekends there with Liam, hiking and cooking and sitting by the fireplace with books and wine. I invited friends there, people who respected the space and treated it with care. I even, eventually, invited Chloe for a weekend visit, though I made it clear she would be sleeping in the guest room and that there were rules about respecting my belongings. She followed every rule without complaint. 2 years after that terrible Christmas, Liam proposed to me on the deck of the Vermont house, with snow falling gently around us and the forest quiet and peaceful in the background. I said yes without hesitation, without the nagging voice in my head that used to ask if I deserved happiness. I did deserve it. I had fought for it. Chloe was at our wedding. She sat in the 3rd row, not a place of honor but not excluded either. She cried during the ceremony, and afterward she hugged me and told me she was proud of me, that I deserved all the happiness in the world. I believed she meant it. My life now is unrecognizable from what it was 3 years ago. I have a career I love and a partner who respects me. I have a home that is truly my sanctuary. I have boundaries that I enforce without guilt. And I have a relationship with my sister that, while not perfect, is honest and healthier than it has ever been. But the most important thing I have is myself. I learned that I don't have to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. I learned that saying no doesn't make me selfish. It makes me human. I learned that you can love someone and still choose not to let them destroy you. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who refuses to respect you, even if that someone is family. Chloe still struggles sometimes. She still has moments where she wants to fall back into old patterns. But I hold firm to my boundaries, and increasingly, she respects them. She has her own life now, her own friends, her own support system that doesn't revolve around me. And that's exactly how it should be. As for me, I'm planning my future with Liam. We talk about children, about buying a bigger house, about all the dreams I put on hold for so many years. And when I think about those dreams now, I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like I'm abandoning anyone or being selfish. I feel like I'm finally living the life I always deserved. The greatest gift I ever gave myself wasn't the vacation home or the promotion or even the relationship with Liam. It was the realization that I mattered, that my needs and wants and boundaries were just as important as anyone else's, that I didn't have to earn love through endless sacrifice, that I could be enough, just as I was, without giving everything away. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself. Sometimes you have to set fire to the bridge to stop yourself from constantly crossing back into familiar toxicity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them fall so they can learn to stand on their own. And sometimes, the person you most need to rescue is yourself. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship, even when it broke your heart? How did you find the courage to choose yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose themselves. And remember, you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep anyone else warm. You deserve respect, boundaries, and a life that brings you joy. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to live yours.